Welcome everybody. It's great to be here. I'm really thankful to Ola for giving me the opportunity to be one of the hosts of this Data Explorers for sponsored by Actian. It's a great way to discover fantastic people and have a very humane chat. So my name is Jean-Georges Perrin. I often go by JGP. And I'm here working on data and AI strategy at Actian, which is a fantastic job. And today I've invited Karen, and Karen invited Beni, and that's kind of a LinkedIn kind of thing. And we're going to first in the first part. We're going to talk exclusively with Karen about her book, Blockchain Tethered AI. And then in the second part, we will have a discussion as well with Beni and there. So, but Beni, if you want to jump in during the first part of the book, feel, if only if Karen says something wrong, okay? If I say something wrong, you keep it for a couple of hours or something. Thanks, I appreciate that. Or you can say it in French. Okay. So Karen, let's get started. Okay, tell me who you are.
I am a software engineer. I've been programming since I was 12, and I spent a long time as an e-commerce engineer, and now I specialize in AI, and I have since 2016. And my company, Kilroy Blockchain, won the IBM Watson Build Challenge for North America in 2017. And so I have been at this a while.
And you're an IBM champion.
I'm an IBM champion, yes, and that's how Jean-Georges and I know one another. And I am also co-chair of the AI/ML task force of C2PA, and you can look that up, c2pa.org. It's the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, which is how I know Beni.
All right, so that we'll dive deep into that a little later, because this is really fantastic, I think. So we're going to talk a little bit about blockchain, right? But it's not Bitcoin.
It's not Bitcoin, no, it's not cryptocurrency.
Okay, so everybody that came to the talk hoping for Bitcoin tips, it's okay to leave.
Bye. Goodbye.
So Karen, tell me, how did you get there? Okay, so I love people's story about, okay, how did you find out there was potentially a problem or an issue or something to do about this problem?
Okay, well, let me tell the story then. I was
Yeah.
coincidentally in Austin, living where you are right now, broadcasting from, and Austin, Texas. And South by Southwest was a big thing in Austin, Texas. Every year they take over the whole town, and IBM had wrapped a building in cognitive cooking. This is 2016. And I went to the cognitive cooking building and looked around. I was already interested in blockchain and enterprise blockchain. And I looked around the cognitive cooking display, and they had a robot that you could move with your mind by putting this net on your head. And it was sitting on a table, and you could move it forwards and stop it, and move it backwards and stop it. And I looked at the guy and I said, how in the world did you do that? And he says, oh, just a couple lines of JavaScript. And I said, as a web developer, I know that that's what I want to do next. And so I started getting interested in the AI. At the same time, I was going to meetups in Austin about blockchain, enterprise blockchain, which was coincidentally also, IBM was also heavily involved in that, and Hyperledger Fabric and IBM blockchain at the time. And so at that same time in Austin, this is definitely an Austin, Texas story. This couldn't have happened anywhere else. I was also coaching a dragon boat team, which who knows what a dragon boat is?
No, I don't know what a dragon boat is.
Okay, it's a 41-foot long boat with a dragon head and a dragon tail. And then you've got people that paddle the boat that are a team, 20 people in the boat. And you've got a drummer that sits on the front and keeps time. And then you've got person that stands on the back and steers with a 12-foot long steering oar. And that's my job. I'm a dragon boat coach. And in Austin, I had the opportunity of someone that I knew there through Dragon Boat also worked at the school for the blind and visually impaired. And he was going to do an outreach program for the kids that were between 18 and 22 years old. It's their last chance to come back and learn how to live in the world. They're learning life skills and learning how to get out in the community. And so one of the activities they did was Dragon Boat. And so my friend Scott said, would you like to get involved in this and help me coach? I'm like, great. And so I spent months with these kids getting ready for the race. And they I noticed that every time that the kids got bored, every time we took a break, the phones came out and the headsets went on, just like any other teenager. And so at the time, because I was looking at the IBM technologies, I was thinking, you could make something with the phone so they could see what's around them and see what the people, where their person is that left them there, so they're not just stuck and wondering. And so then IBM announced the IBM Watson Build Challenge, which I thought was just a crazy coincidence. And I said, okay, now we've got an excuse to do this. And so we dove in, and we kept winning and winning and winning. And one of the questions along the way was, what happens when someone who's blind and visually impaired depends on AI, if that AI is just completely based on data and you've got no way to prove that the data has not been tampered with? And so I asked this question to top experts at IBM in AI and machine learning. And I actually asked it at one of those big conferences where you stand in line to ask on the microphone. And they huddled together and they came back in a second and they said, if you think that's bad, think about the algorithms. And I'm like, holy moly, they don't have anything to make sure that this stuff doesn't get tampered with. So you could trust this AI, like if a farmer was going to plant crops based on what an AI told them, and the data could be all messed up and wrong. And so that's already have been exposed to blockchain in Austin at these meetups. And I want to mention Mark Anthony Morris, who was a leader there in Hyperledger Fabric and IBM blockchain. He really did a lot to bring it to the community. But I started thinking, well, you could use AI to track and trace this. And so IBM did some research, Google did some research. And then in 2021, I started getting the feeling, I told my business partners, we need to really nail this down and write a book. And at the time I was doing book reviews for O'Reilly. Yep. And so I did a proposal to O'Reilly. It was just a gut feeling. I'm like, this is the time. And so we wrote for the entire year of 2022. And then our book was released in February of 2023, Valentine's Day, right along the giant surge of LLM onslaught. And so that is the story of how we blockchain tethered AI.
All right. So I was a reviewer in the book. I'm even quoted at the back, and yes, I like to play it humble, but so in order to prepare for today, I reread it, and to be fair, Karen, the thing is, it's still very relevant today. So it's because even if it came out just around the same time as you said as LLM, I think you mentioned a little bit of ChatGPT somewhere in it, but I think it's still very, very relevant. Okay, so but what would you change now in the book, or are you planning a second edition or something that is, or how did the LLM and the massive interest in Gen AI is can affect your book?
Well, right after the book came out, I started to do a few presentations at local areas, and I can't say that anything had a lot of people at them, but the people that came were really good and really involved. And one of the discussions we had at the library was about Adobe Firefly, and how Adobe Firefly had released something where you could tell that the picture was made from AI. And
as a reminder for everybody, it's kind of a DALL-E's image generator made by Adobe, right?
yeah, made by Adobe. Yeah. And they had a way where you could look inside the file and see that it was made by Adobe Firefly. And so that discussion came up at the library. And Adobe Firefly was brand new at the time. And so we said, well, how did they do that? And we went down the road of saying, well, this was done with content credentials, and we found content credentials, and we found the c2pa.org, and we thought, wow, this is an interesting idea. Maybe this is how you could implement most of these things that we talk about in the book. And the identity piece is there, and the provenance piece is there, and the cryptography is there, and so all of those types of things were very interesting to us. So we went down that road of C2PA.
Okay.
And so if I could change the book or write a new book, because okay, so C2PA has introduced me to a whole new world of standards bodies that I was not familiar with before, and they can be parts of the Linux Foundation, like C2PA or DIF, which handles identity, or it can be an industry vertical. Like SMPTE, Society for Motion Picture and Television Engineers. And these folks have been working for years on standards. And in the case, Beni is nodding because that's the industry he comes from. And these folks are really far ahead. And, I was really astounded at how far ahead a lot of their technologies are, and their knowledge is so deep, and they're so humble, just like you, John George. but they are. No, they really are. They don't even realize how far ahead they are. But
okay, Karen, I feel like you really want to go to C2PA. I don't want to go there yet. Okay, so I'm still.
we're still on the book. Well,
I'm
you asked
still
me
on the
what I
book.
would do differently.
No. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it
But
includes standards, and
so-
that's what
it's great. So just as a reminder, we've got a Q&A. Just do not hesitate to write in the Q&A to ask questions to Karen. You can already ask questions about C2PA. I just won't tell them to Karen right now. Okay. So before we go there, because I know you really want to go there. So I'd like to understand one thing that I. Okay, so the book comes with its own repository where you've got code samples and
yeah.
and that's pretty great. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do a book. I know a thing or two about that, and it's also a lot of work to maintain a repo with the code that is actually relevant to a book. So tell us a little bit about what people can find in the repo for the geeks among us.
Okay. The repo has some Docker containers that you can fire up that give you an example of an AI training event and a blockchain setup, and where you can pop up an application that's also in the book. There's lots of screenshots of it in the book, and where you can emulate a workflow of a team that has that's responsible for training an AI, and then approving that it's been trained properly, and then keep track of all that on blockchain. Yeah. And one of the developers, I believe, is probably here in the chat. Jenish was the lead developer, and if anybody wants to reach out to him and talk to him, they're welcome to do that through me, and I'll connect you.
Awesome. And do you know if anyone has taken this code and put it to production or things like that? Or
No, and Jean-Georges, it wasn't intended to be put into production because it's just a really simple example of a basic AI system that I think we used I can't even remember what we used now. It's been so long. It was either a traffic. We talked about traffic. We talked about images, but I'd have to open my book and look. It would be very rude. But we did a basic event, and then but the main thing wasn't the event so much as tracking the workflow and what we did during the event, and when the custody of that data, when it was introduced, who had it, where did it come from before that, when was it introduced to a machine learning event, what type of machine was it trained on, what are some examples of tests that were done before and after the training, those types of things. And then they're all tracked on blockchain to where you can go back and reverse what happened, have some kind of a trail of breadcrumbs of how an answer might have been arrived at, right? You might say, well, this worked fine if we go back before we introduced this last training data set. And by the way, where did that data set come from? And so those types of things. And the idea was to use blockchain because of the fact that we predicted that so many of these events wouldn't be done by people anymore. They could be done automated. And now we're into the age of agentic, and we know for sure that it can be agents doing this type of event. And so really the code that we included with the book, the blockchain tethered AI code, was meant for a developer, an engineer, to set up on their local machine and say, okay, this is how this could work. And how does this apply to my system and my ecosystem, my environment? And how do I pick out the blockchain touch points that are important to me to be able to track and trace, then to go back and determine the origin and to even be able to reverse the events.
Yeah, and make sure that there's no tampering in the whole process.
Yeah.
So, all right. I want to transition slowly to C2PA, but tell me just in a couple of words, or how much time you want. Actually, what is Nix no code?
Oh, Nix no code. Okay, well, Nix no code is an invention that I made while I was working on an AI chatbot. And I had it was one that was going to go on a website, a little AI chatbot. And so I was working on a blank page. And I was looking at that blank page going, I bet that I could make something come up on that blank page. I've been doing web development for so many years. I thought I bet I can give it a command and make it make something right there on that blank page that I'm looking at. And I did it, right? And so I realized then that I could create any kind of pages, any kind of web development that I knew how to do, and even a lot of things I didn't know how to do just from a prompt. And so I created a product called Nix No Code, and it started out, I was going to make it just for anybody, and I found out that it was really hard to get people to try things, and it really truly is. And I can't, that would probably be another hour episode trying to figure that out. But so what I decided to do, I kept asking, well, what do I do? What do I do? And what I ended up arriving at was to do a hackathon for K-12, for actually it's middle school through high school, because I already have customers in that area with blockchain things that I've done.
Right.
And so so what we did was I worked with the superintendent of Mena School District, Dr. Lee Smith, and
Mena being
Mena being in Arkansas, not in UAE. It's the one that's here. And it's a city. And anyway, though, what we did was we came up with a 3-week hackathon, no code hackathon, where the students, I built this platform with all these fun things, and made it look fun for students, interesting, lots of things to try. You could even create a picture from a doodle. You can, it goes on and on. Now you can do it from music and MIDI and guitar, and it'll make the AI pictures and all that. But what they did was they had a hackathon with a purpose. The first hackathon last year was 4 weeks long, and they came up with ideas for the bike trails that they have in Mena, which are mountain bike trails, which is a really big deal for them. It's a tiny little town, beautiful, clean air, clean water. You can breathe there, and surrounded by mountains. But that's all that's there, right? And they have the mountain bike trail, and they got state funding and federal funding to build the mountain bike trails and actually build a lift up to the top of the mountain. So it's a big deal for this town. So last year the kids competed, and I got sponsors to give them 8 mountain bikes. So there were big prizes. And they made web pages promoting ideas of what to do on the mountain bike trails. And then, but all the AI that I built into this, any kind of image that they produced, and this year they did video, but it has content credentials, and where you can tell where it came from. And so that's kind of a lead into content credentials. But we're teaching, what Nix No Code does is it teaches the teachers how to show the students, guide the students in AI fluency, and help them to look at it with a critical eye. And so they're not just accepting everything. They know how to look at something and examine it and say, this might be AI, but it's kind of useful for this reason. We're not going to worry about it, but at least they know and they're aware. And so they had a hackathon again this year for three weeks, and it went great. They came up with, and this is 200 kids all at once on my system. So it's a good stress test. And this year they promoted the events at the school that they wanted to see more people participate in.
Yeah, this is great. I love how you're involved with the next generation. I know we can continue on this because I know some of your project as well. And just in a word, okay, you're a learner. You're an all ever keep learning kind of philosophy as well, right, Karen? So tell me what you're doing right now.
Well, right now I'm going to college. I'm going to the University of Arkansas, and I am specializing in 2 areas. I am taking independent study in piano, which I've done for 2.5 years, and I'm proud to say I can play Gene Genie and Killer Queen all the way through.
Another episode.
All the way through. Yeah, I'm getting good. I'm getting so I can do it. But we're progressing. I'm getting so I can play, and I'm really excited about that. But at the same time, I've been talking to that instructor about AI, and Dr. Miroslava Panatoeva, and she's amazing. And so, but then this year, I was really excited. Dr. Zach Stillman reached out to me, and he was announced as an AI fellow at the university. And he teaches a business systems infrastructure class at the Walton College. And I was able to get into that class. And at first he said, well, you could come to our class and speak about C2PA. And I'm like, well, why don't I just come to your class? And so I'm taking the class, and I love it. And but that's what I've been doing. And now they just started the AI club. Okay, so I went to the inaugural meeting of the AI club at the University of Arkansas. There's about 150 people there.
Nice.
And then we're also having our own 3-week hackathon, AI hackathon. So I'm going to get to collab with my teacher, with my piano teacher, on a music invention and compete.
Yeah, and you told me a little bit about it, so and I will leave the the cliffhanger for people to follow you on LinkedIn. So that was great. Okay, Benny, you've been super patient there. I think, and I can feel that Karen wants to talk so much about C2PA. So Benny, come on in, unmute yourself, and tell me in your best French who you are.
You want it in French, Jean-Georges?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So I'm Beeri, and I'm very happy to be here and to discuss with you C2PA in a few seconds. By education, I'm a philosopher of sciences, and I'm a builder by necessity for the last 25 years. A self-taught coder. I was active in different verticals, starting from gaming, advertising technology, blockchain, although the concept of blockchain is a problem today for a lot of people, but I want to reassure you, DLTs and not only, crypto. We're going to discuss that in a few seconds. And for the last almost decade, very active in AI. I was I think, employee number 7 of Metaphysic that did bring to the world Deep Tom Cruise. I don't know if you remember this viral reel on TikTok and on Instagram where Tom Cruise was deepfaked in a perfect way. So this is what my company did as a parody and to showcase the dangers of this technology when you can impersonate people. And then after this, we brought AI and most likely generative video AI to Hollywood. Most of our work can be seen in a lot of movies. We went to American Got Talent. We even made to the final by impersonating Elvis Presley almost perfectly on stage. And then we were bought out a year ago. And now what we do with this new company that we have formed together with a PFT, an Indian company, we are bringing Hollywood quality to the enterprise world. And meaning what we do, we are building digital doubles at the level of Hollywood, but for audio and video content at the level of enterprise. So this is the runaway. And in this construct of a little bit more than 1,000 workers, I am in charge of trust and data governance. And I think that this is why we are talking to you.
We can talk about data governance a little bit. Yes, there's a few things I know, or a couple, but that's super exciting. And Benny, you're working with a lot of people around the world, but you're based in Tel Aviv, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. I like. We're very global scene today. So tell me, I don't know if we want to take that, okay, but what is C2PA? We mentioned it, but what's the origin of it and what is it?
I will jump in, Karen. Please forgive me.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I don't want to use big words, and I don't want to give you a kind of definition of what you can read on the website, etc. I think that the best way to define a C2PA, it's a digital birth certificate for any data point that is evolving at the path of you modifying the data point. So if you want to, when you buy food, you have the nutrition label. You know exactly what was made the nutrition. C2PA is offering the same kind of service for any digital, if you want to say media, by providing the following information. Who did that? With what kind of technology? Why it did that? And easy authorized to proceed with this kind of stuff. In another kind of language, if you want to, it's a technical standard coming, by the way, from the Linux Foundation. And I know, Jean-Georges, that you are a little bit aware about this kind of stuff.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Together led with Adobe and represented by our dear friend Leo Rosenthal, which is the father of the PDF. So it's not anybody, it's the father of the PDF. And they have created 4 or 5 years ago this open source standard that is embedding tamper evident metadata into digital content. So this is for the jargon, if you want to. Think of it as a manifest that travels with every image, video, audio file, or text together with you. That's what is C2PA.
So a bit like the EXIF data you found with pictures on your digital, or you take with your digital camera, right?
Definitely. And it's funny you shall mention that, Jean-Georges, because I can tell you that Nikon cameras, the new generation of Nikon cameras, they are C2PA compliant. Meaning when you use Nikon, you're going to have this metadata embedded in every single picture. Another, tool, device that has embraced it, it's Samsung, the S25. When you take a picture or video, it's already C2PA, embedded. And the greatness, because I'm certain that a lot of people here and a lot of people around this initiative, and by the way, on my side, I'm a volunteer there. I'm co-chairing also a working group like Perrin about audio watermarking. Believe me or not, this is really complex. And we met there, but we are volunteers. There is nobody that is paid to create this kind of stuff. But we have a major win. We have a major.
The Linux Foundation doesn't pay their volunteers. So
no, and it's okay. We work for humanity. When my mom is asking, "What do you do?" I'm a mission for humanity. This is what I'm doing.
Next time I see my mom, I'll tell her that too.
And write that down.
Does humanity bring food to your table? No, but it's spiritual.
Exactly. I told you I'm a philosopher by education. But what I want to say about C2PA, I mean, if you work in an isolated mode, I mean, you bring this manifest. It's amazing. You have cryptography, you have timestamping, everything, but nobody's using that. You are not going to be successful. The greatness initiative, beside the technology, that is amazing, by the way. I never met such quality people working on this kind of problems in my life. Years. It's amazing. But the fact that we managed to bring Meta, TikTok, Microsoft, OpenAI, Nikon, and almost every giant big tech in the world adopting this standard, it's our major win for the initiative and for humanity, because it means that we are going to be able really to say what is true and what is not true using C2PA.
Yeah. So Karen, we talked about a practical view of it, right? You can see the result of C2PA, for example, on LinkedIn.
Yes. If you you may have seen the CR logo, which represents content credentials. And one of the places that you commonly see this is on LinkedIn. If somebody uploads an AI generated image or video, it'll automatically put that in, which means you could peek inside that file and see more in the metadata. You can also see them if you generate an image, if you're in Google Docs now, and you go over to the AI on the right and you say, make an image of something, that image will have content credentials in it, and you can play with them and inspect it and dig in and see what that's all about.
Can a C2PA certificate or whatever, can it be altered? Because if I keep my comparison with EXIF in photos, for example, it's super easy to edit and change whatever I want in my EXIF. Okay, is it the same thing with C2PA?
It would be possible, and that's why you might want to add other things to it to fortify it. So if that's one of the concerns that's going to get altered, you'd want to think of that ahead of time and do some things like watermarking or soft binding, where if it is altered, it could be reunited with the original content credentials. And then also too, you can add another layer of protection like blockchain to it, where you can go back and prove what was originally there.
I would slightly answer differently, Karen, from you on this. I think that C2PA, and by definition, every single piece of technology is hackable.
It's all hackable.
Everything is hackable, and with the quantum gap that is waiting for us, all what we are talking about in terms of cryptography will be completely caduc in the next couple of years. But what I want to say is that this is the most advanced piece of cryptography when it comes to content authentication and provenance. It means that instead of having just, a vision of metadata and logging, or if you want to, keeping a record of metadata, there is a layer of protection that we call cryptography. And it means that every single manifest is doubly signed, once by, obviously, the creator, and second of all, by a certification provider that will say that what you have put in the manifest does reflect the reality. So yes, it's possible to hack. I'm certain that, and by the way, we are trying, obviously, to red team what we are building. And I can tell you so far that it's very complicated. But I count on my friends, the non-ethical, I would say, hackers, to attack it and to make sure that we are going to be even more bulletproof thanks to their attacks. But at the moment, we are in a pretty good shape in order, to confront possible cybersecurity issues.
So what's the target audience for C2PA content? When we're okay, I guess you're going to say content producer, but what kind of content producer and
I
consumer?
will work for my church here. I will really work for my church. Entertainment.
Okay.
Think about everything related to the entertainment world. My company is coming from Hollywood. So you can just imagine what is the kind of paranoia that we are living in when it comes to data leakage, or to the fact that our work could be used by malicious users and gain money from it without our permission and consent, etc., etc. So the ultimate, I would say, use case, from my humble opinion, is the entertainment world, where people are creating IP using, obviously, a lot of tools, and they want to protect their IP, and mainly the visual ones. But you can definitely think about everything you want in terms of health, for example. When you want to see that there is a list, or I would say a chain of command that was definitely, approved by somebody. So this is definitely where C2PA could play a role. But the best use case is what we try to do, at Brahma AI at the moment. It's to make sure that once a user is adding a piece of content or creating a piece of content, we start the origin, if you want, chain, to make sure that at the end of the chain, he will still be the owner and will be able to defend his ownership or her ownership on this.
It's like forensic evidence. The more evidence that you have, the more likely you are to be able to trace something back to its origin and prove.
You're building a forensic trail for people to be able to track that.
Yeah.
Works in both sides, meaning it will help people to claim their rights. If today you need to show that you have created it using, I would say, manual work, with C2PA, you just open the manifest and you show to the judge, and you will see, or she will see, that you were the first, etc. But it's also helping us, thanks to the fact that a lot of platforms or editors are using now C2PA to identify the malicious players and to bring them to court. Because, responsibility or accountability, it's on both sides. When somebody will do something wrong, not bad, I'm more, an ethical guy than a moralist one, he will be able, to be brought to court, showing that he has done something wrong.
Interesting. Do we how do you see that applied to AI, if it does?
Thank you for asking that question. Yeah, that's the focus of the AI ML task force. Is we're looking at ways that those for instance, if your data set that you're using for training all has content credentials, and that's already been done at the origin, let's say by taking them with a camera that puts them in at the time that the picture is taken. That's just one way you can get them in. But you're training an AI with this training set, then how can you carry that through to then be able to show in the output that those credentials were used to train that model and had some influence on that output, and then or that the original content was used, a way to use the content credentials and carry it through. And then also too, we're looking at credentials for the model itself. Like the model cards and things like that. And so there's been some yet to be released recommendations written by some very big companies in the task force. And once those are released, I'll be able to talk more about it. But I will say that I'm going to be testing it at the university. That's going to be fun.
It's all looping, right?
They've got a GPU cluster. Okay. And so they're going to let me run a test on I've got a local artist, Zach Morris, that I'm working with, that will give me access to his collection. We're going to credential everything, and then we're going to try to train a model, an image generator that will generate something in his style, and see how much of the credentials we can carry through.
That's very interesting. So you can actually, so the whole idea, if I understand correctly, is you can work with an artist or a production company. You give it to a model, the to the LLM or the Gen AI process can actually take inspiration from it, but trace the inspiration in the derived work.
Exactly. Bingo. And so that is, in a sense, the same thing that I was trying to get across in blockchain tethered AI, without the trained blocks. I mean, without the chained blocks. That's really the difference. And that's why you could take something like this and add blockchain to it. If you wanted to, it's just one more layer of tamper evidence. You've already got tamper evident media, because the cryptography is used on that as part of C2PA. So you've already got a layer of tamper evidence there that can be checked, but then you can fortify it even more with blockchain.
So if and people listeners don't hesitate to use the Q&A there. So if I draw a parallel to what I'm doing with the Linux Foundation with data contracts and data products, we're technology agnostic, correct? You guys are as well, right? We don't care. You mentioned Nikon, which is a best camera brand ever anyway, but it's not, and Samsung can take pictures as well, and etc. So the thing is, you don't care from the hardware perspective, or you don't care from the software perspective what's coming in, correct?
I think that it's spot on, because, and I'm going to draw a parallel also, coming from my world, from the philosophical world. The Swiss philosopher Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, wrote The Social Contract sometimes in the 18th century. And this is exactly this. I mean, we don't care about the individuality in the collective. What we want, and this is what C2PA is doing, it's creating a collective standard that we are all going, to follow, not because we have a direct and sole, I would say, individual benefit, but because it's benefiting us as individuals, a part of a collective. And that's exactly what C2PA stands for. It's a new, if you want, to social contract to manage or to preside when it comes to the destiny of data points in a new world where you cannot say what is synthetic and what is real.
Impressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's needed.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. It's definitely needed. So now, as a if I want to try that, so I can go, if I go to open it to ChatGPT and ask an image, the image that it will generate will contain this credential?
Yes.
Yes and no, Karen. It's not systematic. I mean, we need to be.
I've got to ask for it.
You need to ask for it, that's for sure. And I'm not certain that ChatGPT, with all due respect, will execute. What I know for a fact here is that they are embedding that at every single level of their technology, not because they want. I mean, let's also face the truth. They are not willing really to play the game, because they must. There is a very important, I would say, weight for C2PA in the EUA Act and in the NIST RFM. C2PA is mentioned a couple of times as the backbone of the future regulations for AI. But it's not systematic yet, because there are some issues. And this is, I think, why we are discussing today. C2PA is not the perfect world. I mean, it's not Wonderland. I mean, please do not think like that. It's a layer one, meaning an infrastructure layer. And we need to build on top of it a lot of other things that are missing, like identity access management systems, where blockchain, by the way, will play a central role, if you ask me, because we need this kind of stuff. But because it's not, fully cooked, if you want to, you need to add your touch. So it's not systematic deployed at OpenAI at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you have a model that does it, then you can get them consistently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if they change their models, and if you use the ChatGPT interface, that if you use their APIs, you choose your model, and so I know that I've consistently gotten content credentials out of Azure's implementation of DALL-E, and also out of Sora, which is pretty cool. So it's probably whether you're using the public facing client or not. I can see how that would be hit and miss.
Yeah.
Depends on what model they farm it out to when you make the request. Poor Dally, I'm gonna miss Dally. Dally's being retired. It's like an old friend going away. It's like I'm gonna just use it right up to the last minute and make images.
Is it? I haven't seen that. Is it going? I've not used DALL-E for a while. I was playing ChatGPT recently, so with their 5.0 model, 5.2 model. But yeah, okay. But so one thing, ôte-moi d'un doute, as we would say in French. Remove the doubt from me. So any content, text, the book I'm currently writing for O'Reilly, illustrations, anything.
Everything, and I'm going to be even, more. We work on text, obviously, PDFs and text and stuff like that. We work obviously in AI and machine learning that Karen is leading with her technical working group. But we work also on audio. This is what we are trying now to solve and to tackle. It's not an easy one. And there is also a live video task force. So yes, to answer your question in a very long way, we tackle everything.
So I could take, I work a lot on data contracts. So I could take a data contract and certify it with C2PA.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I see those wheels turning. Yeah, it's a nice trick to have. And one word that hasn't come up in the conversation is agentic. We might be the first.
You must be in a tunnel. I didn't hear it one.
Agentic.
You
didn't hear me. Can you say okay? So yeah, agents seem to be the thing of the day, and that was something that I knew that it could happen. That we'd start dealing with computers that would then go deal with other computers on our behalf.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming for a long time, but what I didn't foresee are the power of the agents that people are building. And it's, because when I wrote blockchain tethered AI, I'm thinking, well, I need to get this into the hands of the top engineers, and probably nobody else will even read it, but it's going to be in the hands of the engineers. So somebody will have suggested this, right? A way to keep this from getting out of control, because technically AI could get out of control. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but there are definitely aspects of it that could get out of control. And like I said, I was thinking of it from the terms of a great big company losing the ability to call an agent back. And I thought about things being digital twins and massively parallel. But what I didn't think about is my brother-in-law is doing it.
I don't know your brother-in-law, but yeah, it's becoming very popular for sure.
You know what I mean? And so it's when it's like when I was a kid and my parents bought me a chemistry set, and first thing I did was wait until everybody was gone and make the stink bomb that I wasn't allowed to make. I had to bury it in the yard. I had to actually bury it in the yard. But what does somebody do if they make the agentic equivalent of a stink bomb now? And what do? If they haven't built any controls in ahead of time to be able to stop that and call it back and say,
we're still a bit in the Wild West, okay, and that's also why I think that the whole idea you had with tethering AI with blockchain allows to actually safeguard us there, and now with agents being the new Wild West, I think you're totally right. We need to be able to have, we can't. I think it's very difficult to control the whole thing, but at least to make sure that what's coming out is what we expect is coming out from the real guy, right? From from the producer we expect it's coming from. I'm always very surprised about the dynamic when it comes to eventually debugging, okay, all this agent-to-agent communication, because it can go crazy very fast, okay, and monitoring all these things. I think we will have to have some monitoring agents at some point to make sure that this is not completely crazy or going completely out of control. So
I think so. We can build also, if you want to, some rules, if you want to, of our social contract using explainable AI, that will force the agents to go transparent. I mean, I think that what you just mentioned here is that the black box era is over, where you were putting everything you wanted in a training model and you could do whatever you want. I think that now, especially because people are not trusting 100% AI, a transparent, box here, glass box, would be way better for us to advocate our cases that what we do is the right thing to do. And we are moving to a more mature phase where people are asking those questions. How can I trust you? How can I trust it? And C2PA is a part of the answer, and blockchain could be also a part of the answer because it's immutable logging. And when it comes to identity, if you connect data to identity, you need both things. You need a system to track a provenance and authenticity, meaning that this is a real picture that was taken by a real guy in the street, but you need also to manage the ownership of this data point. And at the moment, C2PA does not solve it. And we need definitely to bring an element of decentralization and DID, or even more self-sovereign identity to cover, this gap and to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And that's the next challenge for us, I think.
Yeah, and it comes to, there's a line of work which I'm working on here at Actian, and I'm not the only one, all is contributing and others about what is AI ready data. Okay, so I'm in Austin because there was Data Day Texas here, and we had a discussion with practitioners trying to understand what is data and how is it ready to be consumed by AI, and especially enterprise data. Okay, so it's a whole challenge, and especially when the architectures are, as you said, Beni, getting more and more distributed, more and more decentralized. How do we ensure that there is something that it's not a complete BS when it comes to the CEO stable, okay? Or so that's a big challenge. We're almost at time. I wanted to let you anything you want to say, Karen. Where can we meet you in person? Where can we meet you online? What's your next future in the next 6 months, 1 month, whatever?
Well, you can, I'm easiest way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. And so I'm LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com/in/Karen Kilroy, all one word. And so that's the easiest way to find me. And I am I don't think I have any big events coming up or anything big planned. I am open to coding. And I'm also looking for school districts that are interested in having hackathons, also youth organizations, any type of group that wants to introduce their community that has instructors, teachers that they can keep at the center of the instruction. That type of work is what I'm looking for. And I'd also like to read your quote off the back of my book, if I could. Do you mind?
No, I don't.
Okay, I was really happy, really thrilled to have Jean-Georges review my book. So, and this was his comment that got picked. It got chosen for the back cover by O'Reilly's editorial team. He says, AI is a superhero toddler. Without meaning harm, its laser eyes could reduce a city to ashes. The solution? Make sure the toddler does not have a tantrum in Times Square. This hands-on book describes this solution precisely and pragmatically.
And I still mean it. Thanks, Aaron.
Still mean it. Yes. So, this isn't light reading. The first few pages or the first few chapters are kind of stories. They're fun. Anybody could read them. As you get down into it, you might want to flip through, but I think anybody could learn something from it. And for engineers trying to figure out how to implement the workflow that involves traceability for AI, this is your baby right here, because we figured out all the pieces.
Yeah, it's not, I would agree. It's not always an easy read, okay? But it's a very useful read. And if you're not too technical and you don't care too much about but trying to understand the big concept, that's the first part of the book. And then if you really like it, then the second part is all the hands-on part, which is just fantastic, where you've got all the details to make it actually work, and the repo, as we mentioned. So
yes,
thanks, Beni, your turn.
Oh, you can find me on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Beni Issembert, and I think that my next adventure is to definitely bring trust at the level of the enterprise need for AI, and to try and manage to do what we did with Hollywood. Before our time in Hollywood, no AI. After our time in Hollywood, AI is everywhere, but in a responsible way. And we want the same thing for the enterprise world. And I will quote to end maybe one of my top philosophers again. His name is Stan Lee. He has created Spider-Man. And he said that with great power comes great responsibility. And this is really how we are today.
Indeed. Well, and any place you'll be, Beni, in where we can have a coffee or something?
I will be in Washington, D.C. in March, if anybody is there. I'm a fellow at George Mason University in Mercatus Center, dealing with political economics. And I will be in Paris also for the RAISE Summit in July this year about AI, and you might even see me on stage. But
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
All right.
Beni, Karen, this was a fantastic chat. I'm really super grateful. I knew a lot about what you were doing, but it's the same. Every time I had a discussion with Karen, I learned something about her, and we didn't even mention David Bowie this time. Okay, guys.
David Bowie, yay! We can't do one without mentioning. I did mention Genie, which is a David Bowie song. So thank you for mentioning David
Thank
Bowie.
you, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. So thank you very much. Really appreciate being here.